Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. It's 29th of December 2023, and we are fast approaching the end of 2023. And what a pretty incredible year it has been. So I'm going to bring on a dear friend of mine, my friend David Heavener of David Heavener TV. And I want to catch up with him, find out what he's doing, and find out what his views were on 2023 and where he thinks what we're going to be facing in 2024. David, good to see you, my dear friend. How are you?
Hey, Mark. Good to see you too, across the pond, as you say.
As we say.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and hello to all your listeners.
No, not at all. It's great. It's great to see you, David. I know that we touched base in May this year. I came across the pond. We briefly met up and said hello, which was fantastic to see you in person. So first of all, I want to catch up with what you are personally doing, what you're up to, where your TV series The Last Evangelist is at, etc., and what's happening with that, how that's progressing.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Yeah, this started about almost 7 years ago in the attic of an old house. God gave me this TV series. I wrote it within about 3 hours. And it was about a virus that took down the world. And the government came in and shut down churches. And then they issued a vaccine. Well, that's what the script was. Well, what happened 2-3 years later, you know the rest of the story. So episode 1 is out. I play a cop. I bust underground churches because they won't register with the government. And until I hear God's voice, I go blind. I hear God's voice with the Bible in one hand, a gun in the other. I set out to find the Antichrist. Now, I don't know it's the Antichrist. I come from a religious background, Mark, that everybody does in this world. Most people, they claim some type of religion, but it's all religion, no relationship. So in my journey to seek truth, God has opened my eyes, because once you go blind, the only way you can see, according to scripture, is if you realize you are blind. Well, I realized I went blind, and now I see things that I never saw before, and I hear things. And so that's what the series is all about. Episode 1 is out now. It's on davidheavener.tv. They can only see it there. They can see it on Roku, Amazon, Apple TV, because we have contracts with them. We were just coming out with episode 2, the end of January. It's about the ramifications of the vaccine, what is really going on 2 years after the vaccine, which will blow your mind. And episode 3 deals with artificial intelligence, which we're just now finished the filming on that. So anyway, that's where we are right now. And we operate not from a studio. We operate modest budgets, but we operate on donations.
So, of course, you're talking about a drama that you were given to write. The fact that there is any sort of connection with events that have been happening over the last few years is completely and utterly coincidental, David. Of course it is. Of course it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, what's interesting is we get censored. Of course, I have a show. I'm constantly censored and knocked off and banned. But they haven't yet come to the point where they've taken TV series and shows seriously to the point of censorship. They will. And I just wonder, Mark, at what point will they go? Because you and I can sit and talk right now about things that Last Evangelist deals with, and we would get kicked off the air. Yet I can release Last Evangelist, which is very extreme, and it'll seem to be exempt from things. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the level of censorship has not hit the creative market yet. Once it hits that, we're going to be looking at what's happened through the ages in Europe and in the Middle East of them going in and actually, what was that country where they went and actually killed 10,000 artists within a period of 2 or 3 days? It was a Middle Eastern country. And we're going to get to that point, I think.
It's very interesting you're saying that, because in 2 conversations I've just been listening to, one of them is with dear Patrick Wood of Technocracy Rising, and as he's having a conversation with Tom Hughes, sorry. Now Patrick is on about the whole thing, of course, of censoring. So we're go full bore. I mean, my film Between Lambs and Lions is allowed to get so far, then they knock a load of hits off it, and then it has 1 increment every day, which just makes me utterly laugh, because I think thousands of people have seen it. But Patrick was going on about the fact that on the internet we will of course be censored, and that, David, in your interpretation of history, what proceeds, what comes after heavy censorship?
Well, what comes after heavy censorship is persecution, because see, censorship can only happen if it has a set of laws, a set of rules, because that's what censorship is. You're censored. Well, why am I censored? Because you did this. Didn't you know that that's illegal to do that? Right? And so what you're really doing, censorship is nothing but breaking these rules and regulations that the Antichrist government has come up with. And so Christians have to make a decision. Are you going to stay silent? Are you going to stay silent and be censored, or will you stand up and take the hit? If you stand up and take the hit, then you are breaking the rules. If you break the rules, then you will suffer the consequences. These consequences can be anything as little as a slap on the hand, public ridicule, all the way to, well, death, because it could lead to any type of firing squad. I mean, I know I use it, David. You're really, got your tinfoil hat on. What have you been smoking? But we have to remember this has been going on through history with this persecution of faith of true believers. So it could be a firing squad. It could be, hanging. It could be lethal injection. I mean, it could be whatever it is. If it's an extermination where the outcome is to annihilate you. In between that could be jail time, could be financial devastation where they take away your finances, take away your ability to work. So in any case, what they're trying to do, which they won't succeed, is they're trying to shut up the voice of God, because we are the only people God speaks through. God speaks through his people. And that's why, we as Christians, with their testimony and the blood of the Lamb, they would not, I'm paraphrasing, they would not stop. They succeeded, and it's the only way.
It's interesting when you're talking about persecution. I'm going to quickly bring this up before we move on into other topics, but you do have persecution in the United States. There's 125 people in jail that were arrested in regard to Jan 6 and the ridiculous charges that have gone out from there, and that we now know, as a dear friend of mine talked about, David Summerall of Stop8.com, from January the 8th, 2021, complete setup. But look at how that's been censored. Look at how that's been censored, where till only over the last few weeks, the real truth starts to come out. And I will say to people just quickly, if you don't have it, go on AmericanGulagChronicles.com and buy a book that is supporting those prisoners, because, they have lost their jobs, they have lost homes, they have lost cars, and it's split families up. So this censorship, this control, if people don't think that is real, of course, many within our community we do, that we're facing the three-letter agencies in a really powerful way, and they are abusing their position.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my opinion, and I am entitled to my opinion. And I've seen that where on the
Yeah.
day of Jan 6, we now know that the law enforcement were chucking smoke bombs and firing rubber bullets. Basically, they started this. So
Yeah, it's interesting because this makes for a really good conversation. It, it, with the MAGA movement, okay, we're talking Trump and
mm,
all that.
mm,
I don't really go political because God hasn't called me into that realm. I think
mm,
politics is a manifestation of a spiritual condition.
mm,
The issue I have with the MAGA and with all this stuff going on is that you cannot make America great without first making God. Well, God's great, but you've got to make God number one, and it's got to be the truth, nothing but the truth. So help me God. So, but what we're seeing, you mentioned the Capitol and all that stuff. What you're seeing is it's a very good representation of someone who believes in something. In this case, it's make America great again. They go in, they have a leader, Donald Trump, and they go in and they, these things happen. You talk about at the Capitol and everything. And you're seeing that one side, a force, does not want the other side to prevail. So the side that has the control is the side of the justice system. You see what I'm saying? It
mm, mm,
controls
mm,
the justice
mm,
system.
mm.
So to me, that is that is not a persecution of Christians, though there could be Christians in there. I'm not saying that, but what that is, it's a good, you might say, character study if we're writing a script of how it's really going to look like when it comes to real Christian persecution.
Mm,
So if you could imagine a Donald Trump, someone in his position that is and I don't know if he's a Christian or not, but someone that really is following God and really says this is God, and you have another side that says we don't want you talking about that God, which is what
mm,
the Last Evangelist does.
mm.
But yet the person stays up there, keeps talking, and his followers keep doing things that God tells them to do. And the Roman side of it, the state side of it, they don't like that. So the Romans come in, modern day Romans, and they come in and they persecute these Christians. So you're seeing a really good mark, a really good role playing. If you look at that Capitol thing, then that's just the pimple on the butt of a cow compared to what's really going to happen with Christian persecution when you stand up for the things of God.
Mm. But also if you roll, of course, if you roll that back, and I totally hear you, because to me, Ephesians 6 talks about the fact that we're not fighting flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. Politics is the principalities and powers really, really playing out here. And it isn't about, I've been accused of this, where, you've gone too political, whatever. No, I'm trying to pay attention to the signs of the times of what has happened. We, of course, had our big Brexit vote, and we haven't left Europe. We haven't left. There is this warfare going on. There is this fight going on. We can't stop the boats that are coming over the channel into Dover. We can't stop that. You've got a border crisis on the Texas border that is not stopping at the moment. It isn't stopping. It's a total crisis. We don't know who is coming into your country, etc., etc. Now, the whole thing of censorship, this segues, using that wonderful word that you guys across the pond use on a regular basis. This is a neat segue for us, because I think what we've also witnessed on the streets in London and other cities in this country, and also in New York and other cities in New York, we refer to the pogrom, the catastrophe that happened in Israel on the 7th of October. And then look at how the world reacted to that. Within 48 hours is beginning to question, well, were the atrocities like that? You know, I mean, I don't necessarily want to get into this angle right now, but when it's everyone saying to Israel, please, you know, show restraint. But let's just talk about how people questioned the media, questioned Hamas terrorist GoPro video. They questioned all that, David. What are your thoughts? Because people found they have you know, and of course from the river to the sea, they have used this and totally twisted it round, where it took so long for, has the Me Too movement said anything in regard to how Israeli women were treated? Sorry, there's a big mouthful. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question and a really good subject to bring up. You said something about borders. The reason we are seeing what we're seeing, Mark, is because of the open borders. In order to have a unified in order for the Antichrist agenda to be carried out, there must be a unification. You can't have division, because the Antichrist needs to be able to go to one, at the most two major organizations and control them, so he can have control over the world. Remember, you and I are talking spiritually, because we're both Christians, but these things manifest from the spirit into the physical. So what we're seeing here is a unification, people being unified through infiltration. So they're infiltrating all of these evil forces across every border, your border, America's border, all over. You're seeing it. They're just, it's like cockroaches. If you could just unleash them all over the house instead of keeping them in one room, then the whole house becomes infected, and then you've just got to end up tearing down the whole house because it's too infected. So the reason you're getting this in America especially is, over the years you've seen people have come across the border of all ideologies, of all thought process, of all religions, and so therefore the truth has been watered down or manipulated or perverted, whatever you want to call it. So when you do have something like this happen in Israel, you're going to have now these people that have infiltrated over the years come up and voice their opinion. They're now in politics, they're in law enforcement, they're in education, they're all over, okay? And when you try to push back on that, I'm not gonna say it's too late, but you know, you guys should have woke up 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Don't start screaming now. It was your mom and dad's that let it happen, right? So this is why we're dealing with, to me, it's plain and simple. And this is why we're dealing with what we're going to deal with. How do we fix it, or how can it be dealt with? You have to stand up to it, and there has to be a reset. Okay, if you don't have a reset, you'll always have this going on. So, and I know that Israel, because of the spiritual aspect of it, and I know their government, they're not going to back down. They can't afford to back down. They're the little guy. They back down, they know it's over. So they'll go all the way to the wall with it. The question is, will the rest of the world stand behind them? And if they don't, those who curse Israel, God will curse.
It's an existential threat. It's a threat to them, to whether their nation exists anymore and whether they as a people group anymore. Because from the river to the sea means exactly that. It's not about getting rid of Israel. It's actually, we don't, you know, Hamas's charter, the caliphate, we don't want any Jews in Israel, and it looks like they don't want any Jews around the world, period. And sorry.
No, you're right. And they don't. But you have to remember, they're little Satan and we are big Satan. We represent Christianity. So the Jews are just the beginning. Next is going to be the Christians. You see what I'm saying? It's really actually the truth. It's really actually God, the real and true God. You know, you're dealing with the dark force, with dark against light. So if people think this is about the Jews only, they're just they're living in la la land.
We've seen as soon as that atrocity happened, we then saw these marches then happen. But what was it quite a shock to you to see American students, to see from various universities on the streets coming out with what they have then been shouting about?
No, I wasn't shocked at all. I'm surprised it wasn't even more, which it will be, I think, more. This has been going on for years and years. What you see that's come out is, I go back to that cockroach syndrome. I go back to insects. I go back to anything that's infiltrated and taken over and infected. They drop little eggs, and these eggs over the years hatch, and then they grow. And so that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing it come out. And of course, also too, let's not forget about, there are, I call it the puppeteers that are controlling the puppets. Because all you're seeing, Mark, on these things, and I know you know this, these people that come out and protest, I'm not sure they have a lot of brains, a lot of thinking on their own. They're controlled by a puppeteer, right? And and people think I'm crazy when I say this, but there are forces that are much higher than them that they don't even know about, probably, that are controlling them. And so I just see it as part of this evolution of deterioration, and of what Jesus talked about in Matthew 24. And this is what Last Evangelist talks about too. I'm sorry, I didn't mean, but
no.
Episode 2 talks about they have suspended the election because of the riots, and the president's now declared martial law. So now there's a one world leader, basically, that's come out of all this, and it's a little bit too late in episode 2. Except for one guy, John Rhodes, and God uses this guy in a very interesting way. And before I forget it, can I just tell people, if they want to know more information, where they can go to?
Of course, I want you to. No, that'd be fantastic. Go for it.
Thank you. So if you want to watch episode 1, go to davidheavener.tv. We have over 700 original shows on there, and go sign up. You can watch it there. And if you want to help fund the project, you can go to lastevangelist.com and be part of the show. You can be an actor, you can just, a special thank you, whatever. Or you can call 844-806-0006. You can text the word chosen to 91999.
Brilliant. David, no, thank you. So you weren't shocked when certain people came out. Some, Stalin said, the useful idiots. What it showed me was there's an area of life that I have known a bit about, but I haven't really been involved for a long time in regard to university life, and suddenly realizing that intersectionality and defining who you are sex-wise had something to do with the Israeli conflict, in the fact that a load of Hamas terrorists went in and did the worst pogrom since the Holocaust, etc., and that suddenly we see groups like Queers for Palestine on the streets of London, and I think in New York or whatever, and you're just going, this doesn't add up. Do these people actually have any understanding of how these people think? And do they have an understanding that when they sing certain things, from the river to the sea, for argument's sake, there is a genocide? But they also don't understand history, David, because what it's made me do is go and look at history again, make sure I know my facts, go and listen to people. What are your thoughts on this disconnect? People are not reading, they're not researching enough. They don't even know what a book is.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about going back in scripture and looking at the divide between Isaac and Ishmael, Abraham's children.
Yeah.
The Jews and Christianity comes from Isaac. Okay. Ishmael, from the bond servant woman, comes the baby of Ishmael, which was a baby that Abraham didn't trust what God said. So he stepped out of God's will and came Ishmael. Now, it starts from there. That's the seed was planted. So people have to understand, I've had a lot of business partners that were Arabs, a couple of people from Palestine, the Palestinian culture, Egyptians, because I made, a lot of movies. And so I had a lot of partners, and I lived in Egypt for a while, and I also in Israel also, because I had family living over there. So you have to understand the culture, and you have to understand the way people are taught from as a baby, being raised in their environment. But then you also have to understand the blood, what's actually in the DNA itself, which I talked about Ishmael and Isaac. So until you really understand the culture and you understand the lifestyle, you're not going to really know what's going on. And that's why these people over here, Mark, in these universities, they don't have a clue. They really don't. They read stuff, they hear stuff, they've been indoctrinated, but they don't understand that most of these people in the streets, protesting and all this kind of stuff, and on behalf of the Palestinian people, they don't understand that hummus in a heartbeat would take them out too. You know what I'm saying? And so it's really sad.
It is. And also referring back to what I was then talking about, politics, principalities and powers. Israel is at this point politically, in regard to certain opinions, because of politics, and it's because the group is very left wing, does not want to reform the legal system and all the rest. It's fascinating to learn about that, to see that. So just because it's Israel doesn't mean that they don't have issues with the whole woke agenda and all the rest, because they do, because that has been lost him. David, can you still hear me?
Oh yes. You there?
Brilliant. I'm here and you're back. Fantastic. That was good. That was a nice scare. No, that was really good. But what I want to convey to people is go and find out what's going on. Don't just accept it on the surface level. Really go and do your research. Really go and find out what is going on. Now, one remark that you sent me a link in, I think last May. What are you now reflecting on, do you think, in regard to what is going to happen? What do you think? I'm not asking you to be some prophet or predict. We can see the way certain things are building up. We've got a presidential election next year, in November 2024. Just as an aside, we've also got to have an election over here or by early 2025. What are your thoughts? How this is going to play out? Because, you raise this. Genesis 12. If you bless my people, I will bless you. If you curse my people, I will curse you. That is where you are at as a nation. That is where we are at as a nation. And the whole thing of the Balfour Agreement is another fascinating and important story for another day. But bearing that in mind, how do you see where's America going to be in 12 months?
Oh, that's a great question. Let me just back up real quick, Mark, and touch on the Israel conflict before I answer this question.
No, not at all.
But my opinion is the Israeli government has as much corruption as most any other governments. Okay, the government itself. Now you have the warriors, the military. I equate that to Joshua, the Battle of Jericho, okay, as they go in. But then you have God's remnant, God's people. So you have three segments there. You have the political system, which is corrupt because it's man's system and it is just has become so corrupt. Number two, you got the warriors, the military, that even though the political system is corrupt, God still is going to honor and be with them, okay, just like Joshua. But number three, you have the remnant, you have God's people. this is what saves the whole thing. God's not going to let his people be taken out until his time comes. Okay. So we have to remember that. In the same way, I'm going to carry that to the United States and to your part of the world and to all over the rest of the world. It's a paradigm. It's a spreadsheet you can look at. You have the corrupt government, which you're not going to get rid of. You have the military, which God will either honor or bless, depending bless or curse, depending on if they stood with Israel. And then you have God's people. Okay. So what I believe is going to happen in the United States and other parts of the world in this coming year is you have a corrupt political system. The two systems will continue to battle with each other, both corrupt, right? It's a system that's corrupt. And then you have God's people who are actually holding this thing together, not because they're voicing their opinion, but because the love that the Father has for his people. You know, he's protecting them. He's holding it together. But this coming year, you're going to see, no matter what, who wins, whether it's Biden or Trump or whoever wins, if the right wins, then the left is going to raise hell. If the left wins, the right is going to say, it ain't going to happen. It's come to that point, Mark. No one's going to be, they're not going to sit on the sidelines anymore. You know, the question is, are God's people going to sit on the sidelines? That's the question. And that's what we need to ask ourselves. I don't think that I know the government won't sit on the sidelines. The people that stand with these governments, they're not going to stand on the sidelines. They're going to riot no matter if the other side gets in, they're going to riot. But the question is, are God's people, are we as God's people going to sit on the sidelines? Are we going to stand up and start telling the truth, telling God's truth, not taking some political side, but taking God's side, bringing in God's government? And so we're going to see a lot of riots, a lot of upheaval, shutdowns, you know, it could be things unleashed like a financial reset. I don't think it'll be another virus, but who knows, you know, what they pull out of their, again, remember, whoever's doing this is not a Republican Democrat. This is a bigger puppeteer unleashing this stuff. This is the control factor up here. And so that's what I believe is going to happen. Not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to wake people up.
I agree with you, because in fact, Republican Democrat has become, in a lot of ways, has become part of the confusion, because then you end up saying they're two wings of the same bird, and that there is this, I mean, I've said it publicly that the whole of 20th century history, how it's portrayed, is not the way that is actually how it has been portrayed. There are so many other things that are going on in the background. I think what you've said, David, is extremely profound. I mean, the last thing I want to see is riots and all the rest. I don't want to see that. The whole thing with George Floyd, how the true story of that is now coming out, but look at what it then kicked off. Look at what it, you know, burning down cities, etc., across America. But you're right, as in, it's saving our nations to God, and how we put God first, and how I believe this passionately with you, that how we then bless Israel. Are we saying that Israel was a righteous and perfect country? Not at all. Does God have a covenant with the Jewish people? Yes, he does. That land is theirs. And of course, at this time, people don't want to even admit that there is a God. It goes against to so many people that call them the atheists. They're choking on it. They're choking on it. So, David, you've just said it, which is your role is to wake people up. Are you finding more people waking up or not? Where are people at?
I'm finding more people waking up, but it's not the mass. They're not coming in mass droves, because many will be called, few are chosen, right? The highway, the road in the narrow road to salvation, to heaven is not very well traveled, but the highway to hell, mass amounts of people, right? And we have to remember that. We have to remember that. So during my broadcast, if I get 2 or 3 new people come on, I praise God for that. I'd love to have 2 or 3,000. I'd rather, you see, but that's not going to happen because I'm preaching truth, just like you. People want their ears tickled. They don't want hard truth. So only the truth seekers and God's people will come to the plate. So I am seeing people wake up, but it's not the mass amounts of people. It's not some Billy Graham revival happening. I think those days are over. I'm not even quite sure what the merit was of that anyway. I don't want to get into that, but we're in a different time now. We're in a time of kingdom building, not so much salvation, even though we do preach a salvation gospel. Now we're building the kingdom. It's a preparation, for the bride. So we just have to keep doing what we're doing, and God will bring his people together for his time, his place, his purpose, to do what he needs to have done.
David, I think that's a really important reminder. I mean, yeah, I would love to see certain things turned around, but that is in God's hands, because also there's eschatology happening here. We are saying that we're in the end times. We don't even know exactly, to some extent, exactly maybe where we are, but we're interpreting the seasons and we can see what's coming down the line. If we were discussing it, censorship, the whole technocracy thing, etc. Do you think, I think you've touched on this whole thing of a true shepherd and a hireling? You haven't used those terms, but what I'm saying is, as I feel over here, do you feel that over the last few years, a lot of church pastors let their congregations down?
Well, yeah, I mean, many of them never were there anyway. Many of them just came from a place of apostate through an apostate system, just like the political system's corrupt. The religious system has been corrupt for many years, Mark. These colleges, Christian universities, are spitting out fake preachers and fake teachers and fake music ministers. A lot of them, I'm not giving them a free get out of jail card, but I'm going to say a lot of them are just ignorant. It's not that they're out to intentionally deceive. Many of them, I believe, are deceived. So therefore, they go out and they preach a gospel that's not real, and they get caught up in this watered down, church system. And so I don't think a lot of preachers left. I don't think they ever were there. And I don't, they're still not there. There's very few that are there, and the ones that are there, you're going to know, because what did Jesus say? He said, they hated me, they're going to hate you. So when you ask a preacher, how many people hate you? Most preachers will look and go, what are you talking about? They're thinking, I don't want anybody to hate me. And I've even had some say, well, I hope nobody. And I say, well, then you must not be preaching a true gospel, because Jesus said, they hated me, they're going to hate you. Why? Because you're representing me, right? Well, who is they? Is that the government? Oh, I mean, could be. He was talking about Rome, although Rome, was part of that whole thing. He was talking about the religious system, the religious system, the apostate, the fake system. And so this is what we've been dealing with, again, for years: cockroaches multiplying, laying eggs, and all this stuff. It's all coming out now. But that's changing too, because I get people that join me every week going, I've left the church system. I can't take it anymore. Matter of fact, my last video, that show I did, was called Lukewarms Roasting on an Open Fire.
Wow. What a fantastic title. Brilliant. I need to see that.
Yeah, check it out. It's gotten thousands of views. But the reason that I did that, and that was a Christmas show, quote, Christmas show, is because I had to ask God, what do you want me to do? You want me to talk about putting down Christmas again? God said, don't put down Christmas. He goes, tell people what I need for them to do right now. So it was repent, get out of the lukewarm system, repent.
Mm,
And so
mm.
this is where we are now.
Well, that whole thing of reading the letters to the churches again, this is important. Getting out of the Church of Laodicea, I think, to the Church of Philadelphia. I think I've got my theology right on that one. But that you're right. No, you're right. I mean, one of the concerns I had over the summer when I was over, where I see the usual sort of folks, I see the usual sort of truther groups where people are awake to what's going on, and then you have discussions with people within maybe a church environment, and they've got no idea what's going on. And I can say that on both sides of the pond.
Yeah.
And even when people are reading facts in regard to certain things that they sadly put in their immunity system, they still can't cope with it. They cannot cope with it. The cognitive dissidence. But you're right. We are then seeing apostasy. We are seeing things unfold, which means that the pieces are falling into place. What say you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It is falling into place. And there has to be that great divide. Matthew 24, read it. Read it. I mean, I'm asking your listeners, read it for yourself. Keep going over Matthew 24 and see what Jesus said. They wanted to know when he was coming back. Before he answered their question, he gave them a whole lot of information. And the information he gave them is exactly what we need to be reading today and hearing God tell us today. Folks, you're not going to get to watch Mary Poppins. You're gonna have to go through, watching some action and horror films before you get to see Mary Poppins. I'm using this analogy because we're filmmakers, Mark. It's not a pretty picture in Matthew 24, right?
No, and I've just opened it here. Not that I'm going to read all of it. We don't have time, but I mean, as you know, Matthew 24 verse 4, the signs of the end of the age, and this is I think one of the most important statements there, even though I've been accused of this. Ha ha. See to it that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. There is another warning in there, of course, about do not be deceived, and for many you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not frightened, for these things must take place, but that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. In various places there be famines and earthquakes, but all these things are merely the beginning of birth pangs. You've said that these things have to come, and of course deception. I mean, one of the biggest, and we're just coming into the last few minutes, the biggest deception is actually not teaching biblical prophecy, David, isn't that? Would you say that's one of the biggest deceptions that's gone on? No, Jesus isn't returning. This is miles yet. Not that I'm predicting. I'm just saying that we're looking at the signs of the times. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think I what I'm seeing is, look, the three devils are sitting around trying to figure out how to get more people into hell,
Yeah.
And one devil says, let's create a new religion, right? And the other devil says, well, I tell you what, let's just get rid of religion altogether. And the third devil says, no, let's take the religion that now exists and let's just twist it and warp it a little bit. So they'll just keep following. That's the easiest thing to do. So devil number 3 wins. And how does he do that? He takes a religious system and warps it. Okay. Now, I don't know that they'll be saying Jesus will not come back. I know what they're going to be doing is taking, and again, episode 2 of Last Evangelist deals with this. They have a thing called the Transformational Bible, where they take out scriptures out of it that they deem hate speech.
Yes.
you're going to see a new Bible being released that will have scriptures dropped from it, and probably the whole book of Revelation will drop from it. I'm not sure they'll say that Jesus won't come back, because, you know, if you push them too far, these religious people, they won't follow. So you got to keep them going. You got to keep the Pope involved. You got to keep the big Baptist and Methodist people involved in it till you can unify everybody. But what I do see is a twisting and manipulation of God's word to the point of it looks so much like God, but it's not God anymore. But it's hard to tell the difference. People have not now followed God. They've turned themselves into God. Okay. And this is what I see is going to happen. And this is what I read in Matthew 24, when Jesus, you know, talked about, you know, if anyone tells you there he is out in the wilderness, do not go out. Here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. It's like, they're going to tell you there's other messiahs, as in the days of Noah, Jesus talked about. So will be the coming of man. Well, I talked to L.A. Marzulli a lot about this on my show, and I believe that this deals with gene manipulation, which deals with the alien demon connection. And I believe the Antichrist could be a hybrid that shows up. People believe to be an alien that's going to save the world, going to give you a longer life, cure this major disease, whatever it is, make you more intelligent. And people are going to fall for that. And that's even going to be in their new Bible that they have. I know, Mike, this sounds so like we just made a sci-fi movie, but I'm telling you, this is what I really believe is a very, very good possibility.
No, I think fair point. I mean, as some people are throwing out the fact that, you know, I know it's not, well, you know, Michelle Obama will take over from Joe Biden and Barack Obama will be her vice president nomination. There you go. That's not within the realms of completely out there. That is a complete possibility within the realms of what could be going on. Yes, and then you and I get called conspiracy theorists. Well, I'm running out of them. David, I'm running out of time. Could you please remind? It's been wonderful that you've been able to join me on the Sutherland Report, and I'm very grateful for that. Could you please remind everyone where they can find you, reach you, contact you?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. They can go to davidheavener.tv, watch my network. I have over 700 shows, original programs with a lot of people I interview, and we talk about things the church doesn't. You can watch Last Evangelist, the TV series on davidheavener.tv. It is a membership platform that is very inexpensive. You get 2 months free if you go sign up now. If you want to go to lastevangelist.com and help support us, just go to lastevangelist.com and help us to finish up episode 2 and 3. We need your help. If you're interested in the ministry, you need prayer, or you'd like to donate, go to davidheavener.tv/give, or you can call 844-806-0006, or you can text the word chosen to 91999. And by the way, Mark, I got these two new books, The Story of My Life in Hollywood, and How to Use Your True Power in These Last Days. And then I've got these 2 DVDs. That's the DVD of Last Evangelist right there. Right. 8 hours of footage, End Times Investigations, with me and a bunch of my buddies on there. But they can just go to davidheavener.tv/order. So thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's been brilliant to have a different conversation with you as well. But you know, the number one thing is that you undergird that with scripture. You know, we are trying, we're being called to walk down this road. Of course, we want people to become Christians, and we're using all these different vehicles, quite rightly, what scripture says, to do what we can to see that happen, and to warn people to wake up, because what's coming down the line is not going to be, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a bed of roses.
Right. Amen, brother. You just said it right there. That's the truth.
Right. Well, I'm going to play us out. Thank you very much for joining me, David, today. It's been a real privilege. Lovely to see you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please go and look up David Heavener TV. Find me on the Sutherland Report, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. And as I'm just starting to build things because I'm having some amazing conversations with friends of mine. So thank you very much for your time. See you very, very soon on the Sutherland Report.